Fr Conor McGrath.
How are you? Nice to be with you, Gavin.
Likewise, it's an honor to have you on the podcast with me today.
Pleasure.
This is a world exclusive.
Yeah.
First priest on the Modern Warrior podcast. It's an honor.
I hope it don't disappoint, but
No.
really happy to be here. Thank you.
I came across your social media only recently, and I was drawn to the way that you show up there. And I've already spoken about you coming on the podcast with a few people, and the way I would describe you, you come across very likable, very relatable. You don't come across as somebody that's trying to slam an idea or slam an opinion down the line. You're being very receptive and very open about how you speak, but also there's a very sort of kind and generous mannerism about you, which, as I said, has drawn me to you, and I wanted to invite you in here today to explore that a bit more. And before we get into where you are today, because you're a relatively young priest based on
numbers and all
there.
that kind of thing. Sure.
And from an outside perspective looking in, I would have perhaps identified as priesthood not being the very popular, as in taking that up as a vocation as it would have been in the past. So I'm quite curious in terms of how you managed to find this path, or how that path found you, and how that came about.
Yeah, I suppose it's an old story, a long story, Gavin, but funny you mention those characteristics of kind of gentleness and kindness, and I suppose that's part of what drew me to priesthood, and I should say first and foremost to God, very much part of a traditional Irish Catholic family that, faith wasn't like shoved down my face by any stretch of the imagination. It was just part of who we were, part of family life, in terms of even involvement in the local church and parish, and thanks be to God, a really good experience of those kind and gentle priests who were there for my family when we needed them. And just that sense of relationship and friendship that I could see made a difference in the life of my grandparents or family members or even myself. So there was that side of it. And another side of it as well was genuinely, perhaps I had a teacher who said it way back when that, sometimes he forgot I was in the room. And I think I was a wee bit absent-minded, but I would, looking back on that, say, you know what, I was kind of, wasn't meditation, it wasn't anything like that, but there was just, I was in another place. And part of that other place was God, and conscious that God was with me and a big part of my life. So there was both that human factor of seeing the gentleness and kindness and difference that the life of a priest could make, but underneath that all, that relationship that I had with God and that desire to respond to Him. So growing up, like, priesthood was very much part of who I was in terms of like talking about it as a young kid. Probably faded it out, or maybe I like deliberately faded it out in my early mid-teenage years, but it came back strong when I was about 16, 17, and I suppose the idealism of youth as well, like I want to respond to this, I want to make a difference, I want to do something good for God. And once I finished school, I made the decision to enter seminary. Seminary is a fairly long process, like 6-7 years of really working on yourself, your faith, and deciding, is this actually what God wants from me? But yeah, just that experience of, even in seminary, being with people along that journey, and even today too, stays with me, Gavin. There's some tough days out there. There's some really challenging situations when I feel like I'm misery and I'm a failure, but actually it's that underlying principle or underlying meaning to my life, that this is what God wants for me, and this is the key to my happiness, and that I can at times be that gentle and kind presence for others in a way that I and my family have received, you know.
It's beautiful, man. You've mentioned there a couple of times, you didn't say, if this is what I want to do, or if this is what I feel I need to do. You say, if this is what God wants me to do.
Sure.
And it sounds like you've always had that connection with God and with that divine source. And I feel that we all have it to a certain extent. God is always calling to us, or he's always perhaps guiding or directing us in certain ways, but a lot of us are unaware of that. How did that come about in terms of realizing that this is what God wants for you? What was that process like for you?
Yeah, I suppose it is a process of both prayer and also testing it out too, Gavin. I'm even our vocations director, Gavin, so I'm trying to help kind of guys go through this process as well and see, you know, is this what God wants? And I suppose one side of it is, you know, okay, I have my own will, and I know what I want. I also know that sometimes what I want isn't good for me, isn't right for me, and ultimately can, you know, lead me down a path that I don't want to be in. So, okay, if that's true, then if I'm not the final like decision maker in this, or if I don't have the whole picture, well, then who does? And I firmly believe, by life's experience, as you say, you know, God is in all things. God loves all things, and God's presence can be found. And if that is true, and if I have my eyes and my heart open to that, then God will show himself in those situations, and he will lead, you know, through, it could be something like nature. It could be something like in prayer, you know, with his word. It could even be in church, or it might not be in church. It might be in someone's encouragement. You know, the way when somebody says something, you're like, oh, where did that come from? You know, I wasn't expecting that, but it seemed like some kind of affirmation or confirmation, and that could be anything in life.
From God.
For sure. I mean, if we believe God's part of this world, well, then God's, you know, he's not going to come down and shout in your face in any situation, you know, but he's going to use
a vessel
everything
to
around.
Message.
Exactly. I mean, that's the story of Christianity, and of, you know, how God uses the world around us in order to gently lead us and guide us. So that was very much part of my story. And there's also something in it that when I cooperate with that, you know, things are really good and clear, and I feel fulfilled. And the opposite is also true. Like when I try to go my own way, things are not, they're not so good. So there's definitely a way to discern. Discern's kind of the word we would throw out, to process, you know, what God wants from me, and what's ultimately the key to my happiness. You know,
and then God would often show you what you think you want, but you realize you don't want until you find what it is that you actually need to do.
Yeah. I agree with that as well.
Take you down a path that you think you want to go down, to show you all the things that you thought would bring you to where you want to be, to realize that that's not the way. But I had to walk this path to find him, or to find this. Yeah,
for sure.
To find what I need.
And I also think God can use every experience to you know, even difficult situations or different experiences, in order to, you know, bring us to a realization of his love and his goodness too. I always say to, you know, people who come and say, you know, but what if I make the wrong decision, or what if this is not what God wants for me? And I'll always say, like, God can work not just plan A, but B, C, D, E, F, G. You know, like, we don't frustrate God. It's where you get frustrated. And he'll always work out a path. It's not like God's like controlling our lives as some kind of puppet, but he uses our experiences, our personalities, our interests in order to give us what we truly need, you know? So yeah, I'm a believer in that because I've seen it, you know, and I'm a believer in that because I've experienced it myself, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
I'm with you on that, but for a very long time I wasn't, yeah. And you know, that perspective of God showing the way, often, as I said, he can show you addiction, he can show you heartbreaks, he can show you pain. And eventually, I feel, I don't know where you stand with this, is that suffering can often be the thing that initiates action. And without the suffering, perhaps you would never actually call out for God or seek God. And I feel a lot of people these days are dismissing the suffering or avoiding the suffering, whereas you actually, it's not nice. Yes, you don't want it, but this is what you need in order for you to reach out to higher power.
Yeah.
This is his way to collect you again, or for you to find him again.
I couldn't agree with you more, Gavin, and I suppose that's the example actually of Jesus himself. You know, if we believe that Jesus saved us by the cross, and I suppose we can, you know, hear the cross as, you know, Jesus died on the cross, you know, and we've heard it so often since No Height that it has lost its impact upon us. But like, if we really believe that God suffered out of love for us, died on the cross for us, then our sufferings too bring us redemption and love. And I mean, some of the greatest saints who ever lived, that's exactly their story. You know, it was when they were brought to the point of breaking, even the likes of addiction or pain or suffering, that God showed his love and mercy so much in that situation that it led to a sense of resurrection and new life, and God, and that's exactly where God is. You know, he is in our suffering. In it, it's very difficult to see. I mean, you know, that old poem, the Footprints poem, bit cringy, and we all know it well, where we look back on our lives and you see one set of footprints and you realize that's in the most difficult times, and actually that's where God was carrying us most, and using those experiences in order to shape us, mold us into gifts to the world and gifts to those around us. So absolutely, like it's central to our faith that suffering is not like elevated or held up on a pedestal, but that it is in suffering that we truly experience the redemption of God, and that our lives can really be turned around, you know.
It's like that story of Jesus of dying on the cross and then redemption a couple of days later. It's almost as though some part of us needs to die in order to be redeemed.
Absolutely. And it's real life, isn't it, Gavin? You know, you think God doesn't lie to us. Like, he doesn't say, you know what, if you come follow me, everything's going to be wonderful. You're going to have something, everything worked out. We'll wrap you up in cotton wool. You know, it's all fairy tales and that kind of thing. Like, God doesn't lie to us, you know, like pick up your cross and follow me, you know, whatever that cross might be. And to say otherwise would be to deny the human experience, to deny what real people face on a daily basis, you know. So there's a great truth in that.
How do you, I'm sure you come up against it, how do you deal with people or speak to people who are perhaps suffering, but then blaming God and becoming angry with God because this has happened to them in their life? And if there is a God, why would he do this to me? How do you manage that one? Because there could be some people listening who are going, really? Like, I'm in this place.
Sure.
And if God loved me, then why am I suffering?
Going through this?
Yeah.
And that is the most human reaction, the most understandable reaction to those really difficult situations. And what I've learned over time, Gavin, is there's nothing I can say, there's nothing I should say that would in any way reduce or diminish the pain and the suffering that that person is going through. That as someone who is there to, in some respects, represent God, I just have to do what God does. And that's as simple as sitting with someone who is experiencing that. I'm okay, there's no shortcuts here. There's no way to numb the experience that you're having. But what I can promise you is that I'm with you in it. And that's the message of the gospel. It's like, God did not remain distant from us. Like, we don't believe in a God deity far, far away from us. We believe in a God who chose to come among us as a human being to really experience everything that it means to be human and to walk alongside of us. And it's no way to sugarcoat suffering. But it is a way to say, you're not alone in this. God is with you in this. And tomorrow it might not all be solved, but I promise you, in God, in time, it will be. And I wouldn't even say that to a person, because that reduces what they're experiencing.
Which maybe takes them further from God instead of further to Him, like the suffering piece of
100%.
Falling on your knees and I've nothing left here. If you're there, please show yourself.
Yeah.
So.
But it's just like, can I be with you in this?
Yeah.
I think like that old title of Jesus, Emmanuel, God with us. So in people's suffering, it's just, I am with you, to, in some ways, hopefully lighten the load or bring a little bit of light or brightness into the perspective. But as I say, Gavin, there's no shortcuts. It's a loving, patient role that all of us have, no matter what our background, to bear with those who suffer, and compassion, to have to suffer with, that's what compassion means. And I think that's what we are called to. That's what I feel called to. And there's no cheap explanations. I don't think the family would mind, because I spoke 17-year-old, God love him, passed away last August, and I was invited back to a school with his family, just for a memorial mass, and like that, I really wrestled over, like, what do I say? What do I do? I don't know how that mother feels to have buried her son. I don't know how those classmates feel, friends. So, and I said it, look, I'm not here with any explanations, because in truth there are none. I'm just there to be with you, and a sense of encouragement, not without any agenda, So it's like, yeah, when faced with suffering, which is so much part of life, and many people face it, we don't know what other people are facing. So if we can bring that kindness and gentleness into the world by being with people, then that's where we should be.
Yeah, show up with love. Yeah.
For
it's
sure.
quite refreshing to hear you talk about your own battles with doubts and difficulties along the way, because I feel a lot of people have put priests on pedestals, and what does he know?
What, sorry?
What does he know? This sort of,
Sure.
what does he know sort
Sure.
of agenda, and how can he relate to us? And so it's quite refreshing to know that you go through those difficulties and struggles on your own.
No, I mean, I think to think otherwise in terms of even me as a priest, or indeed for people, is just, it's delusional, I know my humanity very much. It's not that I would want to go and like broadcast it at all, but at least I have people that I can be honest with. And again, back to that, the truth that, suffering or difficulties are very much part of our experience. And if I have to be honest in terms of who I am and what I am, first and foremost with myself and God, and with those who I trust. If if I think I have everything right, if I think I have all the answers and I'm perfect in every situation, well, we're in trouble. Really, really in trouble. I think you do have to be authentic and honest as best you can with others, and very much so with yourself. I'm no saint, Gavin, and I mess up with people, with interactions, with situations. I make wrong calls, wrong judgments, and
it makes you human.
It makes me human, and also I hope that at those times I'm big enough. That, in the moment you're kind of reacting to something, and I hope that with time and thinking right, you're able to step back and say, okay, well, what went wrong there, and how can I fix that? I'm not just talking about like parties, but in family or different situations as well. Like the truth is, like, we all do make mistakes, we all mess up, but that's not the end of the story. It's really not. Like it's
part of it.
It's part of it, and it maybe even gives us an opportunity to become better people, to build better relationships. Like, as ironic as it sounds, I think the first time you have a fallout or an argument with somebody, like, and if I'm not talking about anything major, but like, it can actually deepen your relationship. If two people are dating and they never have a disagreement or a fallout, well, you'd be worried there.
Yeah. They're holding back on a truth that they're afraid to express, whereas that truth, as you said, can bring them closer. Yeah.
Absolutely. So it's not even just as part of life and you accept it. It's like, actually, no, these are the ways that we grow and develop and become better people. Definitely.
You used the word there before about experience. Here to experience this life, experience these situations, and then you mentioned the word setback, and something that I mentioned quite recently to some people I work with and help out is that there's no such thing as a setback.
Yeah,
calling it a setback is actually judging yourself and shaming yourself for something that's, again, there to show you the next part of the path, or it's a signpost towards the next level of healing or whatever it might be, or the next signpost towards God, perhaps. It's all leading back to God anyway, but whether they know it or not. So
true.
the experience piece, which maybe is a greater part of our suffering, is the attachment to the ideas and attachment to people and attachments to identities in our life. So when we begin to see it as, I'm only here to experience life. I'm not here to own this life. I'm not here to own these people. I'm not here to own my children, own my spouse, own my career, own my car, own my house. None of that belongs to me. That belongs to God.
Sure.
And there's an incredible sense of liberation and freedom that comes from that. That detachment piece, though, I feel is at the core of a lot of our suffering.
Yeah. As in, when we try and possess
we try and keep it. We try to hold on to it.
Yeah, I think
instead of like, for example, when someone passes away unexpectedly, it's because God has called them back.
Sure.
Because that's God's child, or that's God's will to do so, to bring them back home.
Yeah.
But because they've left our home, and because there was a sense of attachment or ownership there, we feel as though we've lost a part of ourselves. Instead of really, no, it wasn't yours. It was yours to experience.
Yeah, absolutely. But not to own.
It's returned to source.
Yep.
So, and that's a difficult thing to communicate or navigate with somebody that's lost a loved one. But it can also bring a deeper understanding in terms of there's a much, much bigger picture here.
Yeah,
that you're not seeing.
Absolutely. And even that, like, we can take so much for granted, and so much of our modern life is about acquiring things, whether that's people, possessions, whatever that might be. And
Because it feeds our ego and it feels good.
Yeah.
Makes us feel more significant and worthy and valuable.
But in truth, like that, it really doesn't bring us the happiness that we truly seek. I mean, again, one of the most ancient saints in the church, Augustine, said, "Our hearts are restless until they rest in you." And it's not to say that like the things of this world are not good. They are, but it all leads back. And once, like you're saying, Gavin, once we have that perspective that, you know, we're only here for a time, all that we have, you know, is truly not ours. It's only lent to us for the experience of it. But when I have everything in perspective, in terms of, you know, I am for God, I do desire God, then I firmly believe everything else falls into place. I mean, I just got chatting to a random guy yesterday, and he's not in my church or anything like that. And truth be told, I was just kind of like looking to pass through and not make a conversation. But he was like sharing with me how his life story, really. But over this past 6 years, you know, he's tried to get back to his church and get things right. And he was saying that exactly, like, it's strange that whenever he was searching after things that he thought brought him happiness and contentment, it actually ended up making him feel more miserable. But actually, once he seemed to get God right, then relationship worked out, then job worked out, then, and it's not some kind of like superstitious thing that like if I do what God wants me to do, then everything else will work out. But actually, whenever we have God right, we have the capacity and the courage to get other things right, get the relationship right, be honest in those relationships, you know, do what we need to do in terms of whatever that might be, career, whatever else. So I think, yeah, if we sometimes have, not sometimes, if we have perspective in life, if we realize what we're truly here for, ironically, that's when we become most alive and can really appreciate the good things that this world has to offer. And again, you know, it's a very basic Christian principle. You know, by dying we live. You know, and it's there, but somehow we've kind of lost sight of it and kind of thought that that's old hat, or, you know, that's not relevant to my life. It's actually, you know, when you stop and think about it, there's a lot to be said for that old wisdom, if I can call it that. You know, it's
perhaps
more than
it removes the pressure and the stress of feeling as though you have to hold on to this person or you have to show up in a certain way to this person. I'm talking about relationships. Yeah. Whereas, no, hang on. I'm experiencing something here. I'm actually experiencing the hardship of the relationship. Okay, brilliant. Okay, this is here to show me something. That a big thing that I would mention to the men often, and I'm sure you're in the same line of thinking, is this is not happening to you. This is happening for you. It's happening for your good. It's not here to break you. It's here to build you. Yeah. If you can change your perspective and find the teaching in the trigger, or find the purpose in the pain. So, and then, as I said, once you become an observer, things start to change. Yeah. Well, this is interesting. I see these moving parts here, and I can identify my part to play here. And this is here to show me how to show up more lovingly. And she's asking me to be more trustworthy. And but I'm putting myself under pressure and stress because I pretended to be something that I'm not, in order to hold on to this person or hold on to this idea. So I feel there's a release there, and a freedom there that allows you to fall further into love and not veer away because you're afraid. Yeah, absolutely. That avoidance is huge in a relationship. Yeah, because ironically, the more we try and hold on to something, the more we can lose it. Yeah, of course. Yeah, you sort of suffocate. You take the life out of it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. What's the thought process on the church at the moment, and how do you see the church as it is right now? Because a lot of people turned their back on the church over the years, and of course, you're well aware of allegations and accusations and all of that darker stuff in the
Yeah.
past, which takes away from the essence of the church, I
Sure.
believe.
Sure.
Where do you sit with all that?
Yeah. I suppose even that's something that we as a church, particularly in Ireland, have been navigating for this past 20, maybe plus years. And I think first and foremost, in the same ways we're talking about personally, you have to acknowledge those feelings to move on in the same way the church has to. And I think we have done a lot of work. There's never enough that you can do, but the church has done a lot of work to try and bring sorrow and healing to those experiences. On the other side of it, what I would say, Gavin, is, I mean, we talk about kind of generational changes and things like that. In some respects, and thankfully, and I hope it will continue to be, how the church dealt with it is a thing of the past in terms of those cover-ups, and you're never truly going to remove or keep safe every single situation, whatever that might be. But how I think the church now has good, robust procedures in place that deal with that. And we've really learned from that experience. And I hope we continue to learn from that experience to make sure that those in our care are as safe as they possibly can be. So that's that reality. The other reality is that, you know, as vocations director, for instance, I'm talking to some people who'd be in their, like, say, 18, 19, 20, they're at university. And they didn't grow up in the same world. I'm 30 again, I don't know what age you are, but they didn't grow up in the same world as I have. Where the scandals were rightly, you know,
Out there.
So in some respects, they don't have that perspective.
Yeah.
What they do have is they see this world. They have experienced it in terms of the good and the negative that this world has to offer. They've asked questions as to how do I make sense of this? How do I make sense of my life? And for some of them, there is the reality that they have come to faith, sometimes through, and it's one of the reasons why I try and get into social media, through making contact on, you know, seeing something online that sparks something. I mean, we've a person in the parish, a guy called Piotr. He's originally from Poland, but he came here when he was like 3 with his parents. I'm sure he won't mind me telling the story either. But they practiced for a while, but they, you know, the fell away, and the parents don't practice the faith. He just rocks up at the parish one day on his bike and gets talking to somebody he'd seen online, a video, nothing to do with us at all. It was basically asking the question, you know, if atheists are right, you know, then Christians have nothing to lose in the next life. But if Christians are right, then atheists have everything to lose. But that sparked something in him. And from that, then he searched and looked in more and found out where the nearest church was. And this guy lives in like Tullycorn, which is a very loyalist estate. But ever since then, he's been coming regularly. He wants to be confirmed. He wasn't confirmed or anything like that. He wants to be confirmed. Now that's one anecdote, one story of one life, but actually I see it happening more and more often. I mean, they say in Britain, I think they did a bit of work on this, like amount of millennial males who practice their faith. So my generation is 4%. So I think that's like once a month or something like that, or like make a commitment to a church community. That statistic, what do you reckon it would be among Gen Z, according to this study?
Gen Z.
If millennials are 4%, what would it be? I mean, you'd almost assume if you were listening to the narrative that it would be going less.
Yes,
wouldn't you?
Correct.
But what do you think? What do you think it is?
A little bit higher on the.
It's 24%.
Okay.
like 24%. Like that's a 5 times increase in terms of Gen Z who are going to church across denomination.
Yes.
So what are these young people looking for, and how can we as a church respond to that? You know,
Because it still is quite low at 24%.
for sure,
you know.
sure, absolutely.
Yeah, it's better than 4, but it's still.
It's better than 4.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
But
You put 100 people, you put 100 people in the room. It's only 20 of them out of 100 that are going to church.
But we still need to look after that 20, and
which
see,
will have an influence on the other 60%.
For sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, like in terms of, it's always dangerous bringing up statistics because I'm always like, yeah, but how many people actually followed Jesus when he was alive or when he was here on earth? You know, we're only talking 12 people here, or 72 or whatever. So, but it's just, it reveals a hunger that's in some hearts that we as a church need to respond to.
Yeah, and nourish.
Yeah. Like literally, these people are showing up.
Do you know why? What's changed from the 4% to the 24%?
I don't have the full picture, but I
from
do
your
think.
Perspective, yeah.
I mean, I think when we look at the world today, it's a very different place than it was 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago. It's become a lot more complicated and
disconnecting, for
sure. And I think faith, God. Well, I think God is the answer always, but I think, I mean, specifically the church is offering to those who are seeking answers an answer. And it's not the complete picture. It's not all the answers, but it is the church is seeking to satisfy the hunger that is there. And it brings that, like the Catholic Church specifically, I'm right in saying the oldest institution on planet Earth. So within that, there's a stability that, you know, if you think of like governments or trade or like way of thought or philosophies, or they just seem to be more changing quicker and quicker and quicker now. And something's in today, it's out tomorrow. This competing thought, a lot of confusion. And then you have this institution, for want of a better word, that has a continuous link over 2,000 years and a sense of stability and clarity that is sometimes missing in the world. And again, it's not to say it's all the answers, it's the complete picture for everybody. But it is a refuge and a foundation that you can go to and build upon, you know?
Yeah. Big thanks to Earthkind, our new sponsor of the Modern Warrior podcast. They have some incredible products like the tallow and honey balm, which is great for skin hydration and repair. And then they've got the wild yam balm, which helps to relax the body and calm the mind. I've been using both of these products. The wild yam balm has certainly been helping with my sleep, and the tallow and honey balm has certainly helped with my skin. So go check them out. Click the link below and grab yourself a couple of these. The part that I was actually thinking of there is there's comfort or there's stability and predictability.
Yeah.
And the question that was coming to my mind before that came to my mind was, when you go to mass, it's usually there's a certain process that's quite familiar and it hasn't really changed, if at all, over the years.
Centuries, yeah.
And I was curious whether that, in your opinion, if you're in a position to do so, whether that requires some change to be able to maybe communicate to people in a different way through what has changed in the world. But then I thought, well, maybe there's stability in the predictability of going to to Mass, and there's a sense of comfort that
Mhm.
is familiar.
Yeah.
It's familiar.
Absolutely. I think like ritual, for want of a
Mm.
old-fashioned word, is actually really important to the human psyche. You know, like every religion has some form of ritual in it, and there's a reason for that. You know, it's not just somebody sat down one day and said, "Okay, let's do all of this." You know, they actually it both like Mass, for instance, is our worship for God of God, but actually there's a line in one of the prayers where it's like, you know, worship itself is God's gift to us. It adds nothing to God's greatness. Like God is God,
Yeah,
whether we show up or not, whether we do or say what.
He's not worried.
He's not worried.
Yeah.
But it's itself God's gift to us. And I see that, and not even in terms of Mass, Gavin, but say, for instance, the many wake houses over the years that I've attended, or indeed bedsides where a person is dying. And, you know, rightly, it's a very emotional and traumatic experience for people. And, you know, I know initially when I was like literally we carry a little book called The Ritual. Like back in the day, you'd kind of go in and I'd be slightly terrified, you know, particularly some really difficult situations you'd be going into. And what I found in those experiences was and it's not a cop out, but actually the safety that's in the ritual. That I know what I have to say and do. I know you have the interactions before and after, but when it comes to the prayers, I know what I have to say and do, and those who are suffering know the prayers. I mean, and they find great peace and solace. Like even you know somebody's hyperventilating and you breathe into your bag, and it's the whole thing of like slowing down the breath. I saw a doctor. It was in Lourdes, so it was kind of in a Catholic context, shall we say? And she just got the girl who was panicking. Just keep praying the Hail Mary, pray the Hail Mary, pray the Hail Mary, or you know and there's something in that ritual, in the repetition, that actually, whether we're conscious of it or not, feeds our souls. So like even in terms of like Mass, and I mean it's beyond my pay grade as to what changes, what doesn't change, or what stays. But what I would say is it's the familiarity of it. No matter where we go in the world, like as Catholics, you rock into a Catholic church and pray, you know, and it's going to be the same as what it is in Dublin.
So that connection too, isn't it?
Yeah,
I mean,
and that
we're all connected to this, and we're all here
and we
together.
all belong, you know, and that there's something
belonging.
familiar in it, and we're brothers and sisters in this, and so yeah, I think sometimes ritual can be challenging and can get a bit boring and monotonous, but actually when you know the rubber hits the road and we really need it, it's actually a source of salvation for us, you know. Yeah,
it's very refreshing to hear that, because the belonging and connection piece is what I feel drew me to the church in the first place, although I wasn't aware of that at the time. I loved going to church as a kid. It was, I mean, I didn't have to be dragged to church. I loved going there. And I became an altar boy, and I loved being involved in the whole process. I mean, being an altar is like being on stage for a 8, 9, 10-year-old kid. It's like,
you feel important.
I'm up here. I'm ringing this bell. I'm burning the incense. All of that.
Sure.
So it's just being involved was incredible. And somewhere along the way, I lost my way, and I feel I allowed as I mentioned to you earlier, I allowed those stories to inflict me and to and to feed me with a sense of bitterness, or sense of anger. Yeah,
sure.
And recently, I decided, I've found God in different ways over my life, or He's been finding me in different ways in my life, but I didn't entirely connect it back to church immediately. But then I came to a realization around Christmas time that, okay, you know, you have a choice here. You could continue to be angry and bitter and hold a sense of resentment over the church or what they did there and how they affected people over here, or you could have the courage to rise above that to learn to forgive, to let go, and to show up as a better Catholic, not a Catholic full of hate or bitterness or a sense of anger. Show up with love, and when you go to church, become, or at least step in there from a place of love, not fear, or don't step in there from a place of, oh, I have to be here, I choose to be here.
Yeah,
and that was incredibly. That was incredibly. That was an important shift for me, because with all that has been said and done in the past, okay, do you want to keep living in the past, or do you want to rise above that?
Sure.
And you want to be sucked into the fear or the hatred, or are you going to rise above that? And the whole process, and this is the work I do with men, is to help them become better men. But then it's also realizing for myself, becoming a better man also means becoming a better Catholic.
Sure.
It's all part of it. I'm born and bred a Catholic. Just going to turn you back on that. Yeah, it's easy to turn you back.
Sure.
Much more difficult to forgive and let go. So, but I still, the reason I'm bringing that up is I still feel that so many people are tying themselves down to the past. Yeah. And it's great to hear that there's a 4% versus 24% rise. But there's still the 4% though.
For sure, absolutely. And that's
what
my
about
generation, absolutely. And,
so how do we get a message over to them to say, hey,
stick in there back. And sure.
Forgive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
You belong here.
You're
connected here.
Hit the nail on the head.
Because that whole other the belonging and connecting piece is, I found belonging and connections in other places. So I replaced the church with things like alcohol, with things like porn, to feel that sense of connection that I'd lost in the church. And I'm looking at the world, I'm working with men every single day who are also finding this sense of connection or belonging in cocaine or alcohol or with so-called friends.
Sure.
Whereas, the connection you're looking for here can be found through God, and you feel closer to God, or you feel at least maybe this is where you belong when you go to church. Yeah.
And that's absolutely central to like our faith, Gavin. We pray our Father. We don't pray my Father. So that sense that I have brothers and sisters with me in the fight, in the experience, is so essential to it. That sense of belonging. Like it's not just me and God. It's us and God with us. And to be able to rejoice together, suffer together, pull each other through, like that's absolutely essential. And it's actually so much part of like what it means to be human as well. So yeah, I think that sense of belonging is key, and it's one thing we try even within our church context, parish context, just to give people that sense of belonging. They used to say, like back in the day, people believed, they belonged, and they behaved, or maybe the other way around, behaved and belonged. Whereas nowadays, actually, they say it's changed. Like what we as a church, as Catholics, need to do first is give people a sense of belonging. Then they'll believe, not they will believe, but they'll come to believe because of the love, the care that you have shown them. And then maybe they'll behave, that'll be the bonus in the end. But they will, their lives will change in terms of where they want to live more authentically. That's what I mean by behave, to live authentically. But it's first belonging. And actually, it's so much of what the world pretends to offer, but doesn't offer. It's like, the world, it can be a very isolated, lonely place for so many people, and the illusion that the phone gives us that we're connected to people, we're like you were talking about it, where we started, in terms of like seeing somebody face to face, and like, don't get me wrong, like it's really good that you can reach somebody at the other end of the world, but if I'm just scrolling through reels and feeling that I'm like in the moment being connected to people, and then like as soon as that's over, I'm there. Emptiness, yeah. So yeah, I think that is where what the church has to offer, and it's who we are. Like the church means, it's about the people of God together. Yeah, definitely.
You're actually talking about something recently there on your socials about fasting and the importance of fasting, and I'm actually quite intrigued about the whole fasting process because it can bring us closer to God. And you know, the partner of the podcast here, Earthkind, Shane Ryan, who kindly sponsors us, is big into fasting. I had a conversation with him yesterday. He said, "Man, hey, when I'm fasting, I'm connected to everything on a deeper level, and I'm connected to God on a deeper level."
Yeah.
All right, interesting, because I haven't done the prolonged fasting piece.
Yes.
So I'm intrigued of your perspective and your idea around fasting and why it is important for us to fast.
Sure. And with that, Gavin, I think, as always with these things in faith, there's both the human aspect and the spiritual aspect.
This is not about losing weight, people.
Yeah. no, for sure. And if that helps, great. Yeah. But I think it's back to even what you were saying earlier about what possesses us, and, if I am completely, or not even completely, but if I'm controlled by my appetite, if I'm controlled by what I want, when I want,
as in your moods, your feelings, your emotions,
like step back and think, like, that's not good for me. Like, that is not good for me. I know when I just throw myself at what I think I want or need, and actually something might be feel good in the moment, but actually it just leaves me like too much alcohol. Then the next day I'm paying the price, and it's like, so it's these things
you in one way, but it's starving you in another, isn't it? Yeah.
And it's robbing you of something as well, like literally your next day is gone because I've drank too much. That's a simplistic way of putting it. But yeah, I think whenever we fast from say food, like plenty of Catholics will fast during Fridays, during Lent, and it's about actually gaining a different perspective. I'm not ruled by my appetite. God, it's you who are my true sustenance, my true bread. I mean, we saw Jesus in the desert, and we know that story. Have the bread, take over the world, all of those things that the devil seemed to offer him, and it's like, no,
temptation.
It's like, man does not live in bread alone. And to realize that we are the children, not the parent. We are the ones who are dependent, not the provider, in everything in life. So it takes fasting removes something really basic, really essential to us that we need, and we will come back to, in a way to give us better perspective of who we are and to whom we belong, and there's a physical side to it, but there's a deep spiritual side to it. And I think, in actual fact, of all the Christian practices that we have, whether it's prayer, even during Lent, like supporting people, helping people, in terms of fasting, it's almost like it's so strong about what it can do for us, and just that act of self-discipline, in a way that truly helps us. I think fasting is a really powerful thing to do. You think of intermittent fasting and things like that, things that are fashionable in the non-Christian world, and it's like, but there's a reason why people do that. It's like
the discipline to skip a meal, and the discipline to make a commitment to something, or commit yourself to a higher source instead of the substance of only food.
Yeah.
And does it sort of go back to that voluntary hardship to initiate some level of suffering to then give it to God?
Yeah, transformative suffering. I think so. Not suffering for itself.
Yeah.
Never suffering for itself, but transformative suffering, and where that can lead us, and how that helps us in terms of perspective, in terms of who we are and what we are. So, even like, it's not, if I'm fasting to make myself miserable or to make other people miserable, it's kind of missed the point,
or maybe it's showing you the point.
Yeah, true. I'm a misery.
Yeah.
But it's transformative suffering. Like, why train? Why exercise? You know, there's some days in life you're not going to want to, and it's going to be really hard and really tough. But actually, the long-term benefits of it are, are there to very obvious. You know, so it's almost like something that pleases in the moment, but actually has long-term consequences. Whereas actually something that's painful in the moment, but actually has long-term good consequences. And I think fasting is that, and the in kind of church speak, the grace that comes from that. Like, have you ever done Loch Derg? You're Donegal, man.
I have not done
Loch Derg.
Not yet.
I kind of got fooled into doing Loch Derg. I said that because like I had no idea what Loch Derg was, or I think I was 18 at the time. I was finishing up school, and there was a trip going, yeah, I'll go for a treat for a couple of days.
For the crack.
Yeah, it was an eye opener, and dear Lord, I don't think I'd ever like properly fasted before, even at that stage.
Yeah.
But you see, when I look back on that experience, and like again in kind of religious speak, the graces that I experienced through that, you know, utterly transformative in terms of my life. So if that's what fasting for those 3 days did for me, well, why wouldn't I put in place, fasting in my life, you know, particularly at times when I need it. So I'm off alcohol for Lent, trying to be off alcohol, and it was a kind of a practice whereby saying, okay, like since Christmas and things like that, and things can take over, and I have, even though it's only like a week and a bit in, but I've just felt I wouldn't be drinking every day or every night or something like that,
understand.
but again, socially, particularly, I mean, there's so many social situations as a priest you're in,
Of course,
and but just that practice of saying, and you really do, even within a short space of time, fasting from a particular thing, feel the benefit of, you know, definitely. And it's there's so much of this in the secular world that has come from religion that maybe the connection isn't there, but actually when you make that connection, I believe it kind of can transform that as well.
Yeah. It's that discipline piece again, isn't it? The discipline comes from the word disciple.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're being a disciple of Jesus or being a disciple of God.
Sure. Right.
And it's something that I've observed other people who are maybe a little bit further on their path to God, and I watch them and I'm curious as to, okay, and even Jesus himself, I'm looking at going, how could it be, like, what is it that person's doing that I could do more of? And I'm looking at it's discipline. It's the discipline to show up. It's the discipline to meditate, the discipline to pray, the discipline to do what is right instead of what is easy. Like discipline. That's what it is. And it's, again, you know, we look at, well, again, your perspective, but I look at Jesus and his disciples, and then realizing, the disciples maybe didn't finish there. We are the disciples. It's continued. We've just forgotten. And of course, the disciple requires discipline to do what is right, not what is easy, or to do in God's will instead of the will of the ego. So, what's your opinion on that in terms of tying the disciple with the discipline of the disciple?
I have to say, when you mentioned it there, Gavin, it made a connection. Because there's no point in saying, you know, I'm a disciple of Jesus, but actually don't follow any of the rules or anything. You know, just you know, just coast along.
Yeah.
No, it's part of who we are to do as Jesus did, or to try and do. Going to mess up sometimes, but to try and do with Jesus is to be disciplined.
Yeah, but Jesus was a human as well.
Yeah, 100%.
Before he became Jesus Christ, which is something that people
100% God, 100% man. You know, absolutely.
So,
and
I mean, he made a lot of mistakes and failed on the way until he
definitely faced the temptations and all of that kind of stuff that we heard about in the desert and things like that. And
so he was also on a journey of becoming better and becoming
definitely 100% human. And knows exactly what it's like to be us. And again, his followers, we know how his followers messed up at the start, and we know right through the ages how his followers messed up. But even if we go just back 2-3 generations, like what was good for your grandfather, great grandfather, my great grandfather, you know, it's not. We shouldn't just dismiss that as saying like, oh, they were a more naive or simple time. It's like, no, like, you know your own mind. you think your grandfather didn't know his own mind, or your great grandfather didn't know his own mind? You know, he made decisions based on his life experience, and his life experience showed him what the discipline, the following of Jesus actually meant. And let's not dismiss that. You know, maybe he was onto something. And I think this generation is kind of sensing that, you know, like maybe there is something in being disciplined and you know,
making sacrifices.
There's something good for me in this, you know. Rather than in some respects the deception that the world can offer. Just do what you want, be what you want, and you're all, you know, where does that end up? You know. So,
oh my goodness, we need to remember that one in part 2. That's a whole other conversation, isn't it?
Sure.
Be whatever you want now. It's like, well,
yeah,
stand by for that one.
Sure.
And see what happens. But yeah, again, it's going back to what you mentioned earlier. You weren't asking what I wanted. You were asking, what does God want?
Yeah.
For me, or from me. Yeah. I feel that's a key question for everyone to maybe sit with today after this conversation.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you would encourage them to ask or to explore as they sit here listening, or even contemplating?
I think do exactly what you just said there. Gavin. Ask it. You know, don't sit back and be a passenger on this. You know, and explore your life, explore your faith. Don't coast. Like, we are here for a time, and it's not to say that we can make every day wonderful or brilliant, but by being discerning, by reflecting, by being intentional, we can make our lives, the lives of those around us, and indeed our world, a better place. So just don't coast. Take steps, whatever your background or belief, you know, delve into it and really dig out what it has to offer. You know, there is wisdom there that we have received, that if we are just push that day aside and say, belongs to a different time, a different place, I have nothing to gain from that, actually you've missed out on so much. You know, so delve in, explore, question, experience, you know, and through that you will come to truth. I firmly believe that. You know, I think the worst thing we can do is just coast.
Yeah, not to question.
And just assume everything's going to come to us, you know, and so don't live half a life, live fully, and everything that means, you know.
Show up with love, not fear.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you, Father. And
pleasure.
I'm enjoying your content on social media, so keep putting it out there.
Yeah,
it seems like you're getting a great reaction as well. And for anyone listening to this podcast, please let them all know.
Yeah, please.
Where they can find you. And
either on Instagram or on Facebook as well. It's Fr Conor Vocation. So please do. And I enjoy it. It can be hard work at times to kind of keep content, keep things going.
I know about
it. When you're trying to do life as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I believe in it, and thank you for the encouragement.
Yes. Is there a purpose behind? Well, there is a purpose.
Yeah,
but what is the purpose
it's principally its first principle is to, as I say, I'm our vocations director, recruiter. So my job is to find priests for the future. So part of it is trying to show our Catholic faith, priestly life, hopefully in a way that is authentic and true and life-giving and joyful. So that's part of it. And then just trying to create a culture of vocations as well. So like I'll try and delve into little details of the Catholic faith or questions that people have that, again, if we're just like what you were saying earlier, Gavin, I think is really powerful about you've chosen to come back. You know, I think so many of us at times can just coast along and we haven't fed it, and somebody might show up at church for 20 years, but they've never really stopped to think about it, and they're just doing it because they just do it. Whereas actually, if even with bumps along the way, we choose something, it's much more real. So in terms of some of the videos, I'm trying to explain things that we're very used to, we've seen a lot, but actually we haven't stopped to think about, you know? So that's part of the intention as well.
Yeah. You've got a great way of explaining certain things that are happening in the church or part of Catholicism that nobody's really asked a question about. I've seen you burning charcoal there in incense.
Yeah. It's like, well, why do we do that?
It's like, oh, I thought it just smelled
just
nice.
just for the
like,
crack
no,
of it, you know.
there's
Like
a
the altar
purpose.
servers want something to swing.
There's an intention behind all of this. So, but what is your intention?
Yeah,
that is important. Yeah, and
100%.
But thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yes. Till next time.
Absolutely.
Thanks. God bless. Thank you again for tuning in to this episode. If there has been something that has resonated with you on this conversation, ping me a message over on Instagram at Gavin and let me know what it was. Chat soon.